She's been gassy lately, girl, just full of waste. Not really. That was actually a comment I made earlier about Anna Eklund when I was watching Bailey Sarian's video on her exorcism. Anna's exorcism, not Bailey's. What's up, guys? Babs Money here with another episode of Dragatha Christie's Unsolved Mysteries. I unfortunately no longer have the magnifying glass. I should have taken it from my mother. What does she need it for is the question. Is she also an investigator? Is she a PI? Does she have a secret life I don't know about? America. Continuing from where I left off, today we are going to be talking about the suspicious death of Kendrick Johnson. This occurred on January 11th, 2013, so about 7.5 years ago. And this was in the gymnasium of Lowndes High School in Valdosta, Georgia. It was in the gymnasium that young Mr. Johnson was discovered headfirst in the center of a vertical rolled up gymnasium mat. So y'all know, if you've ever been to any sporting events, when they take the wrestling mats and they roll them up and put them to the side and they're vertical like that, basically he had fallen down in head first. As I said, this gymnasium was at Lowndes High School, where Kendrick was a student. His body was discovered by a group of students who had climbed up to the top of the mats, each of which stood about 6 feet tall and then 3 feet wide. An autopsy by the GBI, otherwise known as the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, determined that he had died from what is known as positional asphyxia. To put it short, someone gets in a position they can't get out of and they then suffocate. Their theory was that Kendrick was looking for a shoe or pair of shoes and fell into the mat and then died when he couldn't get out. A big reason for this was because 3 students told investigators that it was pretty common for students to store their shoes either behind or under the rolled up gym mats. And it was noted that at the time he was found, Kendrick Johnson was not wearing shoes. That don't mean a damn thing, but I digress. Another student said that he shared a pair of Adidas with Johnson, and that at the end of gym class, Johnson would climb up to the top of the mats and then drop the shoes down into one of the mats. The investigation by the Lowndes County Sheriff's Office was led by Lieutenant Stride Jones, who stated, quote, "We never had credible information that indicated this was anything other than an accident," end quote. I happen to disagree with you, Lieutenant Jones. Johnson's family naturally questioned the hypothesis made by investigators, and due to their dissatisfaction with the investigation, hired an independent autopsy, and this was conducted by a man named William R. Anderson. And Mr. Anderson was with a company called Forensic Dimensions in Heathrow, Florida. And they hired Mr. Anderson on June 15th. Mr. Anderson claimed that his findings indicated evidence of blunt force trauma to the right neck and soft tissues, which suggested that this was not an accident. You don't say. Thank you, Mr. Anderson, for being that bitch. After the private pathologist's opinion was released, Johnson's family stated that they indeed believed he had been murdered. They then retained the services of an attorney named Benjamin Crump. On October 31st, 2013, the United States Attorney for the Middle District of Georgia announced that the office would open a formal review into Kendrick Johnson's death. Mr. Crump's application to the Georgia court to practice in Georgia and represent the family was not ruled on, and he withdrew from representing the family and has since taken no part in the case, which is just really suspicious to me. They decide they think he's been murdered and they try to hire an attorney, and his application's never ruled on and he has to withdraw. I say has to, that's my belief. I think something's up. The Johnsons then filed a legal action to open a coroner's inquiry into Kendrick's death. When the judge in that case delayed a decision, the family demanded that Georgia's governor at the time, Nathan Deal, immediately authorized the inquiry instead. Together with the NAACP and other civil rights activists, they held a rally at the state capitol in Atlanta. The governor's office then released a statement that they supported the judge's decision to await the report from the U.S. attorney. The independent autopsy found that sometime after Johnson's body had been recovered from the gym mat, that it had been stuffed with newspapers. What the f***? The funeral home that processed the body following the GBI's investigation, autopsy, said that they never received Johnson's organs from the coroner. Never got them. His internal organs were said to have been, quote, destroyed through natural process, end quote, and, quote, discarded by the prosecutor before the body was sent back to Valdosta, end quote. Y'all's theory is that he suffocated to death somehow, so why are his organs destroyed? Even if he really did fall into the mat, that's only a 6-foot fall. It's not enough to destroy his organs. Just doesn't make any sense to me. Like I said, they said the organs had been discarded, so this left a hole that the funeral home needed to fill. In these instances before where they've had to do that, they've used substances such as sawdust or newspaper or what have you. An investigation by the Georgia Secretary of State's office found that the funeral home did not follow best practice and that other material was, quote, more acceptable than newspaper, end quote. And I would agree. Y'all just gonna yank his organs and stuff his ass full of newspaper? That's dirty, dude. Regardless, the investigation cleared the funeral home of any wrongdoing. A spokesperson for the Secretary of State stated that they found the funeral home, quote, didn't violate any rules, end quote. That don't matter to me. It's whack as and they need to be brought down to justice to the knees of God. The Johnson family then filed a civil suit against the funeral home seeking monetary damages, and they then requested that his body be exhumed a second time. Who can blame them? If that was your child, what would you do? What's the tea, Christine? Chrissy? Miss Girl? What are you doing? They were granted permission for the exhumation by Valdosta city officials, and his body was exhumed on June 22nd, 2018. Now, we are going to get into a part of the case that is one of the reasons it haunts me, because this makes no sense. Such ding dong! Ding dong! In November of 2013, about 290 hours of surveillance footage from 35 different cameras that covered the gym area was released to CNN following a court request. A forensic analyst found that tapes from 2 cameras, count them, 1, 2, honey, are missing 65 minutes of footage, while another set was missing 2 hours and 10 minutes of footage. So that's a total of 3 hours and 15 minutes of missing footage from that day. Some of the lapses in coverage were found to result from camera systems that were not synchronized with one another. So they weren't working correctly, honey. They weren't doing the gigs. They were trying to do their group number, but they weren't synchronized, so they were up for elimination, and they all 6 had to lip sync for their lives. I don't know. Timestamps between separate camera systems from around that same time period differ by as much as 20 minutes, giving the impression of a gap or portions of the footage where no gap existed. Other missing footage was due to the camera's motion activation technology not being triggered. They said, oh, ain't no bitches in here, we haven't seen them move. But the area where Johnson's body was discovered was outside the range of the surveillance cameras. So what does that tell you, America? Attorneys for the Johnson family expressed fears that the footage had been edited as part of some sort of cover-up. And baby, you know I'm here to expose the cover-ups and bring them bitches down to the knees of God, to justice for their iniquities. However, analysis by the Valdosta Daily Times tried to explain the anomalies, casting doubt on this cover-up theory. Girl, no it don't. Not for me. Next. The president of the Valdosta Lowndes County of the SCLC, otherwise known as the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and the former lead investigator of the chapter, have said they believe that the Johnsons' attorneys have, quote, not been entirely truthful with their statements, end quote, and that there was no cover-up. Why are you saying such things? The Johnsons filed a wrongful death suit against the Lowndes County Board of Education. Now, this lawsuit was also against not just the Lowndes County Board of Education, but its superintendent and the high school principal. Yeah, girl, bring them all. The suit alleged that Kendrick, quote, was violently assaulted, severely injured, suffered great physical pain and mental anguish, and subjected to insult and loss of life, end quote. The lawsuit implied that there was a race-based dimension to the assault. Dimension, that's a funny word. The suit also alleged the violation of Johnson's constitutional right to equal protection based on race. It said that the defendants had repeatedly ignored reports that Kendrick Johnson had been harassed and assaulted repeatedly by a white student. It also said that Johnson was attacked during a bus trip about 14 months before his death. The suit further alleged that one student in particular had a history of provoking and attacking Kendrick at school, stating that these events took place, quote, in the presence of coaching staff and employees of the school. End quote. It also said that school officials failed to, quote, properly monitor the activities of students through all areas, end quote, and to, quote, maintain a properly functioning video surveillance system, end quote. I agree. How the hell do you have over 3 hours of missing footage? Bitch, get out of here. That's half the damn school day, bitch.
Are you tripping right now?
In August 2014, a lawsuit was filed against Ebony Magazine. And this was after they published a series of articles where they named 2 students as possible suspects. And those students were named Brian and Brandon Bell. Now, they used pseudonyms for the students, but otherwise gave pretty much accurate descriptions of them, including that their father, who in reality was Rick Bell, was an FBI agent. The Bell parents asserted in their lawsuit that their sons were innocent, baby. My sons are innocent. And that they had been harassed as a result of this publication. Boo-hoo for the poor white children. Tale as old as time. Song as old as nasty ass wine. What part of the story do we get the truth? Where does that happen? In January of 2015, the Johnsons filed a $100 million civil lawsuit against a total of 38 individuals. Now, this included 3 of Johnson's classmates, as well as local, state, and federal officials, including the school superintendent of Lowndes County, the Valdosta Lowndes Crime Lab, the police chief of Valdosta, many sheriff's deputies, the city of Valdosta itself, bitch, the state medical examiner, the Georgia Bureau of Investigation and its 5 agents, and the FBI agent by the name of Rick Bell. The lawsuit alleged that Rick Bell ordered his sons, Brian and Brandon, whom I mentioned, as well as another classmate, to attack Kendrick Johnson. Johnson's family alleged that his death was a murder and accused the respondents of a conspiracy to cover up this homicide. I'm with you, Johnson family. Like, this is way too suspicious and I don't like it. Someone need to clear the air and come forward.
Come up off the pot if you ain't bitch.
They believed that with the direct help of the school superintendent as well as the sheriff, bitch, the sheriff, girl, the Lowndes County attorney, Jim Elliott, stated that these allegations were, quote, unfounded and baseless, end quote, and that any response would be made in court. Off, girl. Who are you? All local Superior Court judges recused themselves from presiding over the case, preventing the lawsuit from being filed and heard in Lowndes County, where it f***ing happened, bitch. What kind of Now, all of these judges' reasons were due to their close proximity to the accused, this FBI agent and his bitch-ass children. For that reason, Chief Judge Harry J. Altman stated that it was inappropriate for these judges to preside over the case. Ooh, so bad. Scooch, 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 scooch. Shut up, hoa. Now, shortly before the lawsuit was filed, the U.S. Attorney for the Middle District of Georgia, Michael J. Moore, said in a statement that a federal investigation was still open and that, quote, the investigation has proven more complicated and taken longer than originally anticipated, end quote. Well, cut the Mary. Who's to say if it's really taking longer or if you're just taking longer, covering the scoop. Don't play with me. It's very similar to feelings I have about the Alonzo Brooks case, which I am definitely going to do a video for after I watch that damn Netflix reboot of Unsolved Mysteries. Baby, that shit is wild. Ray Rivera, Patrice Andres, and Alonzo Brooks are all getting episodes. Patrice can wait because she's white, but yeah. Michael J. Moore has since resigned. After his resignation, the case was transferred to the Northern District of Ohio. Ohio? A case from Valdosta, Georgia is being done in Ohio? Like, what is happening? And this was under the leadership of Stephen Dittelbach. Cool! Stephen Dittelbach, darling. Shortly after receiving the case, Dittelbach resigned. What's she doing? Now, despite these resignations, the investigation by the Department of Justice continued, according to the DOJ spokesperson, Michael Tobin. I'm about to choke myself to death. In November 2015, the Department of Justice filed a motion to intervene and stay the case. The U.S. Attorney said that allowing evidence discovery in the civil suit to continue would have a, quote, chilling effect, end quote, on the federal investigation, which had been investigating possible obstruction and grand jury witness tampering. Escandalosa! After the DOJ's motion was denied, Jackie and Kenneth Johnson, Kendrick's parents, dismissed their own wrongful death lawsuit, saying that they hope to refile it after the conclusion of the Department of Justice's investigation. Jackie and Kenneth Johnson were then sued. Yeah, you heard me. They were sued for more than $850,000 in attorney fees and $1 million in defamation damages. On June 20th, 2016, the United States Department of Justice announced that they would not be filing any criminal charges related to Kendrick Johnson's death. I can't roll my eyes any harder. Stating, quote, after extensive investigation into this tragic event, federal investigators determined that there is insufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that someone or some group of people willfully violated Kendrick Johnson's civil rights or committed any other prosecutable federal crime, end quote. Basically a bunch of bullshit is what I just heard. Sorry, but whack whack the quackers out. On August 10th, 2017, Georgia Judge Richard Porter ruled that Johnson's family and their attorney had to pay more than $292,000 in legal fees to the dozens of people they had named in their lawsuit. Now, here's where it gets really crazy, and I remember seeing these pictures of his statement online, and I even saved them so that I could put them here. And it'll be hard to read, but I will put a transcript of them in the description. Many people believe that a key witness in this case was silenced. Just before the Johnsons were ordered to pay those fees I just mentioned, the Johnsons' lawyer, Shaveen King, filed a statement from a man who claimed to have heard a spontaneous confession from one of the Bell brothers. The man, who was 27-year-old Ryan Domek Hernandez, was later arrested on trespassing charges right after this statement is made. Jackie Johnson claims that the arrest was, quote, bogus, end quote, and was an attempt to silence new evidence in this case, which I do believe as well. In his statement, Ryan claims he was at Brandon Bell's apartment in Jacksonville in April of 2016, and that Brandon admitted to the following things. Brandon and Brian, as well as a student named Ryan Hall, argued with Kendrick in the school gym before Brian struck Kendrick with a dumbbell during a quote, unquote, roid rage. Also, that Brian threatened Ryan to keep him quiet, that Rick Bell had contacted former Sheriff Chris Pine about the fight, and that Pine then met with the county coroner, that an unnamed agent altered Lowndes High School video surveillance footage, that Kendrick's organs were removed in order to obscure his time of death, and that his autopsy records were falsified. This is all that was stated in Ryan Domek Hernandez's statement. Checks out with me, my dude. Now, a spokesperson for the Bell family, who at this point I trust about as far as I can throw their white asses, confirmed that Brandon was living in a Valdosta apartment off campus at the time that Ryan Domek Hernandez's this happened. In June, a previously unreleased FBI report confirmed, it says confirmed, but I don't believe it, that the three young men were nowhere near Kendrick Johnson when he was last seen. Funny to me because he ends up being found in an area that's outside of the surveillance camera, so that doesn't really mean jack shit to me. Apparently, Brandon Bell was off campus traveling to a wrestling match at this time, which doesn't really mean anything to me because Brian's the one that allegedly killed him, not Brandon. Video footage shows Kendrick walking to the gym alone, and he doesn't appear to meet up with anyone when he gets there. But that doesn't rule anything out. The GBI has maintained that his organs were returned with his body to the Harrington Funeral Home after his autopsy. So where the are they? Many have discredited Ryan Domek Hernandez due to that subsequent trespassing arrest and his prior history with the law in general, which really sucks because when these things happen and these criminals come forward with confessions or stories of hearing confessions, you never know if they're telling the truth or not. But it just makes sense to me. The Bell brothers and their father have continued to assert their innocence, and as of today, we have no further developments in the case of the death of Kendrick Lamar Johnson. So, what do you guys think happened? I don't want them to try to get me for this. I believe that they did it. I obviously can't say with certainty. I can sit here and say I know, but I don't know concretely. Is that a word? That the Bell brothers had any part in this. But it's just really suspicious, the circumstances and Domek Hernandez's statement and just all these things that don't add up, sis. It don't add up. And I don't think Kendrick Johnson just fell into some gym mat while looking for a shoe. I just don't believe that. That doesn't seem plausible. Like, I feel like if he fell in, he would either be able to stop himself somehow or somehow, like, maybe not knock the mat over. I don't know. But it just doesn't make sense to me that this kid who had done that 1,000,000 times falls in and dies. And what about the organs? What happened to his organs? Doesn't make any sense at all that his organs just disappeared. And the GBI swears up and down that they gave them back to the funeral home. Who knows who's telling the truth at this point. But that is the case of Kendrick Johnson, one I've been wanting to cover for a very long time, and I would love to hear you guys' thoughts and opinions down below in the comments. I believe the next case I'm doing, I'm actually going to have a special guest join me who lived in the town at the time of this and remembers developments from the case as they came in. Little surprise as to who that guest is, but the case itself will be of the disappearance of Asia Degree that happened in 2000, and we're gonna get into that. With all of this crazy being said, as always, I am Babs Money, a.k.a. Dragatha Christie, and I am signing off for now. Good night. Until next time, money chasers. Wham!